The Miami Marlins should consider trading for Yandy Diaz.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Marlins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Jeremiah Geiger. I'm a diehard Marlins fan, and I've podcasted about the team for the last 4 seasons. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel or follow wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And on today's show, I'm going to discuss why the Marlins should consider making a trade with the other team in the Citrus Series, the Tampa Bay Rays, and acquire first baseman Yandy Diaz. I think this would be a huge addition to the Marlins lineup, something that would propel this team into competitive territory, a statement that they're ready to compete in the National League East. Tendered contracts happened today. The Marlins tendered all contracts for all arbitration eligible players, one of whom really surprised me. More on that later. Also, the history of the Marlins' first round picks over the last half decade or so has been brutal. Hopefully that can change moving forward. Let's start, though, by talking about Yandy Diaz, because first base, as we all know, is one of the clear needs of this team. Dare I say, the most pressing need of this Marlins team is the first base position. If you were to tell me, Jeremiah, you can pick one position group, one upgrade for this Marlins roster, it would be first base. I feel fine up the middle with shortstop and second base. I feel pretty solid about the outfield. I think it has the potential to be one of the best outfields, specifically left and center field, with Kyle Stowers and Jacob Marcy leading the charge there. The rotation, it's in good shape. Edward Cabrera, Sandy, Yuri, the big three. You have Ryan Weathers if he stays healthy. Now, the bullpen can use an upgrade. I will not deny that. I think the bullpen as a whole can get better. But first base is the position where I look at the depth in this Marlins organization, and it's just not there. You had Liam Hicks at times playing the position. Eric Wagaman had over 500 plate appearances. That can't happen again if this team is serious about competing. Now, I was on the Josh Naylor hype train, and I did multiple episodes where I publicly said, hey, I want the Marlins to go out and make a run in the Josh Naylor sweepstakes. And what happened? Didn't even happen. Didn't even come close to happening. Naylor re-signs with the Seattle Mariners. He stays in the Pacific Northwest, and he got a bag. 5 years, $92 million for one of the best first basemen in baseball. But there's another guy that the Marlins could pivot to. Not a free agent, but a potential trade with the Tampa Bay Rays to acquire Yandy Diaz. I think Yandy Diaz is one of the most underrated players in the sport of baseball. The dude is a stud. All he does is hit. And he's under contract for 1 more year before a club option for 2027. He'll be making $12 million this upcoming season, coming off of a year in which he hit 300. He bashed 25 home runs, an OPS of 848. He's 2 years removed from an all-star appearance and a batting title where he hit 330 to go with 22 bombs and 932 OPS that season. He's a stud. He's a perennial, just, what's the word? Not all-star, but he should be an all-star. He should be a perennial all-star. It's crazy to me. He only has 1 all-star appearance in his career, because you could take a look at these numbers and they're all-star worthy numbers. He's a really good hitter. The defense, questionable to say the least at first base, but I'm not looking at Yandy Diaz for his defense, man. Like, as long as you're adequate at first, like you're playable, you don't look like a high schooler playing college baseball, a high schooler playing professional baseball, and you can make some basic digs and you can catch the ball. It is what it is. I'll sacrifice some defense for offense at the position because that's what this team needs. He's a hitter who can hit for power and hit for average. He does both. He would come into Miami and immediately bring some juice into this lineup. Immediately be right up there with Kyle Stowers for the best hitter on this team. He's from Cuba. There's a strong Cuban presence in South Florida, in Miami. So that's big for community and the community support. You know, he's an under the radar player. Not a lot of people pay attention to the Tampa Bay Rays. Let's just call it how it is. When we talk about first base, who do the majority of fans know or watch? The casual fan's going to say, oh, yeah, Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson maybe with Atlanta, Bryce Harper, Yandy Diaz. No, they're not going to talk about Yandy Diaz. Heck, they might talk about Ben Rice with the New York Yankees before Yandy's name gets brought up. Pete Alonso, of course, another one. But Yandy Diaz is right up there with all those guys. Now, the Marlins' financial situation, there should be no excuse for them not to take on his contract in a potential trade. And what would the trade look like? How much prospect capital would they have to give up? Because Thomas White and Robbie Snelling, I'm going to tell you right now, they're off the table. White's untouchable, and you're not trading Robbie Snelling in a prospect package to get Diaz. But anybody below them, and Joe Mack, I'm going to include Joe Mack as somebody that is just off the table in trade talks with the Rays. But a prospect package with anybody else, go for it. Make some offers, because I'm fine with putting together a little package for the Rays to take a look at. And maybe you even look at your pitching depth, because the Marlins do have a surplus of pitchers, and not everybody can be in the rotation at once. Maybe you can include someone like, I don't know, Jansen Junk. There's a lot of ways to go about this. The point being, though, acquiring Yandy Diaz would be a franchise-altering move for 2026. It would be the biggest move of the Peter Bendix era, without a doubt. Last two free agent classes, Tim Anderson, Cal Quantrill, and then they've traded away individuals. They traded away Jesus Luzardo and Jake Berger. So this offseason, if Diaz is available, then you absolutely should be trying to go get him. I'd rather have Diaz than O'Hearn. I would rather have him than Rhys Hoskins, Luis Arias. Okay? Pete Alonso, he's in a category of his own, and he's going to cost a pretty penny for whoever signs him in free agency. But this wouldn't be a free agent acquisition either. Again, he's making $12 million. If you take on his contract, that's fine. You only have one player on your team anyway who has a guaranteed contract, and that's Sandy Alcantara. Sandy Alcantara is the only player right now who signed an extension, who has a multi-year deal with this team. So the Marlins are in a perfect spot financially to take on a contract. That's the least of my concern. And as far as the prospect capital, I trust and support Peter Bendix to make the right move, to hit the right buttons. Again, as long as it's not Thomas White, Robbie Snelling, or Joe Mack, go get Diaz. He's a proven hitter, and he can take this lineup to new heights, to a new horizon. You pair him with Stowers and Augustine. Those are three serious power bats now. And you're not relying upon, Stowers and Augustine to carry the lineup with their pop. Now you have Yandy Diaz, who also hits for average, who's a good contact hitter. He's just a good hitter in general. Huge addition, potential addition to this Marlins lineup. And I would be ecstatic if they make it happen. Today, the Marlins tendered contracts to all their arbitration-eligible players, and one of those players that was issued a contract surprised me. I'm going to get into that right after this. First, this episode is brought to you by Gametime. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team, but also tickets. Getting tickets can be a hassle, and that's why I use Gametime. It's the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. Gametime's fast, it's easy, it's backed by the Gametime guarantee, and you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. I love going to sporting events. I love going to baseball games. I love going to football games. And when I do, I use Gametime. What's my favorite part about Gametime? It's the all-in pricing. When you see a ticket, when you see a seat you like, and you want to go purchase that, the price you see next to the seat is going to be the price you pay at checkout. There are no hidden fees. It's awesome. So download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Shout out to all the everyday listeners out there. The Marlins tendered contracts to all their arbitration-eligible players. And Andrew Nardi is the one that surprised me the most. I'm not going to lie. I did not expect to see Nardi offered a contract, or tendered a contract rather. Someone that hadn't pitched all of 2025. And from what I had been hearing, hey, don't be surprised if Nardi is non-tendered. And Nardi's not with the Marlins. It's an $800,000 contract, so it's not a lot of money by any stretch of the imagination in terms of the baseball money, of course. This gives me hope. This tells me that Nardi probably isn't as cooked as previously once thought to be. And all we need to do to confirm this is look back in history. Look at recent history and what the Marlins have done. Declan Cronin was straight up released from the organization. Nardi's been tendered a contract. Both of whom played pivotal roles in the Marlins. Well, for Nardi, it was 2023, and then 2024 is kind of a down season. But for Declan Cronin, he was a workhorse in 24. He was one of the bright spots of that Marlins bullpen in an otherwise forgettable year. Misses all of 25. Nardi misses all of 25. Cronin is gone. He was just cut. And then Nardi is still with the organization, and he's going to have a chance in spring training to compete once again for a role in the bullpen. And what makes this super important is that if there's still juice, if there's still gas left in the tank with Andrew Nardi, that's huge for Miami. He's a left-hander. What do the Marlins lack in the bullpen? Reliable left-handed options. They were rolling out Josh Simpson multiple times in high-leverage situations because Clayton wanted to give him time to develop or something, but also he was the only left-handed reliever they had at times. Cade Gibson is good. He had a solid rookie season, a really good rookie season. But you can't rely on those two to be the only left-handed options out of the pen. You just can't. Not if you're serious about competing. Not if you want to win and build on a 79-win season. Do I expect the Marlins to say, okay, Nardi, Simpson, Gibson, we're good? No. No, I do not. I think the Marlins still have work to do in the pen. Whether that's a righty and a lefty, I do think they need another lefty, because you can't guarantee Nardi suddenly coming back and looking like his 2023 self and all's fun and dandy in the world. No, that's bad business. Again, he hasn't pitched since 2024. We're going into 2026. There are free agents out there that you can sign. You have to address the bullpen no matter what. But it would be an added bonus to this team if Nardi shows up in spring training and he looks good. He looks healthy. And the injury concerns are no more. And he's competing for, a high leverage role once again in this Marlins pen. The Marlins also tendered contracts to Edward Cabrera, Anthony Bender, Calvin Fauché, Max Meyer, and Braxton Garrett. Braxton Garrett is a player who I'm going to be closely watching this offseason and spring training. Any updates this offseason for Braxton Garrett? You never know if he posts a throwing video or something, because it's kind of one of those situations where you just don't know how he's going to look. He had a great 2023 season, a lot like Mr. Nardi. And then 2024, inconsistent, gets shut down, has surgery. You don't hear from him for a year and a half. In spring training, how is he going to look? How's the velocity going to be? He doesn't throw extremely hard. That's never been his game. But if his stuff looks good, then Garrett can compete for a rotation spot. If he doesn't look good, then what do you do with Braxton Garrett? He's under contract for this year. He's a pitcher that's had a lot of success for 1 year in particular, just that 1 year. It was a super year. It was kind of like Edward Cabrera this past year, where he put it all together, and during that playoff run, he was awesome. But now the rotation, they found Jansen Junk. They have Ryan Weathers. They have a lot of pieces where it's hard to see Garrett coming into the fold and just stealing a rotation spot unless he looks really, really good. Because Jansen Junk looked really good. Ryan Weathers has better stuff. Unless one of the big three, Edward Cabrera, Sandy Alcantara, and Yuri Perez, one of them get hurt or there's a trade, Garrett right now, it feels like he's on the outside looking in the starting rotation, and I don't think he's a bullpen arm. I just don't see the Marlins doing that. I'd rather see the Marlins move Max Meyer to the pen full time than a pitcher like Braxton Garrett. But that's why you have spring training. That's why you have roster battles. That's why you have competition. And Garrett has one more option, one more minor league option. So you could always send him to AAA and have him build back strength and get those reps. But my thing is that if Garrett's not good enough to crack the rotation, then I don't know. Like I don't think you should just waste bullets in the minors with Garrett. Either way, spring training is going to have a lot of storylines. We're going to have the bullpen. We're going to have whatever additions the Marlins make this offseason. And then, of course, the guys that are coming back from injury, just watching them and how they come back, notably Braxton Garrett and Andrew Nardi. Don't forget about third base as well, because, of course, you're going to have Graham Pauley and Connor Norby duke it out to go win that first base job. Coming up next, we're going to talk about the first-round picks that the Marlins have made over the last few years. Spoiler alert, they have not been good. Hopefully, that changes moving forward. Guys, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. And you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And another team that's making that late push is the Miami Hurricanes. Miami, a 2-loss team, still in playoff contention. They're on the road this weekend at Virginia Tech. The line is minus 18.5. So if you think Miami goes out and makes a huge statement on the road, you can go bet that right now at FanDuel, because right now FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I appreciate all the everyday listeners who make this part of your daily routine. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you're new to the show, leave a like. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And of course, this show is free and available wherever you get your pods. The history of the Marlins first round picks have been brutal the last few seasons. Going back to 2020, let's start there. So a half decade ago, Max Meyer, drafted 3rd overall. Underwhelming career at this point. Hasn't proved that he can be a viable or consistent starting option. And of course, you're going to hear me say multiple times, you could move him to the pen. There's a world in which you salvage Max Meyer's career with the Marlins by moving him to the bullpen and giving that a shot. Maybe something can change, because it's not happening in the rotation. It's just not. Elite slider, one elite pitch. The fastball is downright bad. The changeup, inconsistent. Something has to be done if you want to salvage Meyer's time with the organization. 2021, that was a selection that at the time, keyword at the time, looked like a huge steal. It looked like the Marlins had the steal of the draft, and I was pumped up about it. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. That was Khalil Watson out of a North Carolina high school. Watson just could not hit professional pitching. Luckily for the Marlins, they used him in a trade package a couple years later to get Josh Bell, which ended up propelling them to the playoffs. But Watson, just terrible offensively. Luckily also, the Marlins drafted Joe Mack in a comp round with the 31st pick. So they've been really good at drafting in the comp rounds, not so good at drafting with their first pick of the year. 2022, Jacob Berry. Berry is Rule 5 eligible, was not added to the 40-man roster. It's to be determined if he's going to stay around in the organization. Does another team take a chance on him? If I had to bet, I'd probably say he gets passed over, because to me, his offensive skill set isn't anything special. He's fine. He's decent offensively, but he also has no home in the field. He can't play defense. A major league team is going to see that. They're going to say, well, he doesn't have 30 home runs. He doesn't hit 330. It's kind of average. We'll pass. But we'll see what happens. 2023 was Noble Meyer. Noble Meyer, best right-handed prep arm of the class. Hasn't worked out to this point. Just can't figure it out command-wise. There was a time period in which him and Thomas White were ranked pretty closely to each other. And then White just accelerated, went 0 to 60, and Meyer started going in reverse. And at this point, I mean, they're not even close to the same caliber of prospect. Thomas White was drafted in a comp round. He was their second pick. Meyer was the first. So make or break season, I think, at this point for Max Meyer. Well, it is a make or break season for him. But for Noble Meyer, it's a make or break year as well. It's got to show us something. It's got to show the organization something that they can have hope in. and try to resurrect what's been to this point a very disappointing couple of years in the Marlins system. 2024, a season ago, PJ Morlando. Oh boy, PJ Morlando. What makes this worse is that Morlando was followed by Carter Johnson. Second round pick. Carter Johnson's been terrible. Morlando hasn't been able to stay healthy. And when he is healthy, he just hasn't been that good. Big year for Morlando to try to showcase that power that made him a first round option. Maybe not the first option for a lot of teams in that year's draft, but he was selected in the first round out of a South Carolina high school, had a really good combine. He has a lot of power for PJ Morlando, but at some point you got to be able to hit too. You have to have a hit tool. You have to do it in games. So big year for PJ. Last season was Iva Arquette. And this brings me to my final point of the night is that Iva Arquette, hyped up college bat, the best college bat available in last year's draft, gets drafted 7th overall. The Marlins select him over somebody like JoJo Parker, who I wanted. Arquette has a lot to prove because of his stage in development. He was a multi-year college starter with Washington, with Oregon State, had a lot of collegiate at-bats, played in the summer leagues, started at high A. 2026, you can't roll out of the gate slow. You got to have a big season. You have to prove why the Marlins invested in you, gave you a huge signing bonus, and drafted you 7th overall. I don't want to see a year in which other teams and their draft picks are rising up prospect rankings and scouts are saying awesome things about them and their potential, and Arquette's just kind of forgotten. Make your statement early. Give this team another blue chip prospect, because that's what I think the Marlins have needed for years now. Are those blue chippers, can't miss prospects, those studs, especially offensively. Pitching, I think we got him. Thomas White, wouldn't trade him for any other pitching prospect in the sport. Give me Thomas White over everybody. Robbie Snelling, probably the best second pitching prospect an organization has. I'm a huge Robbie Snelling believer. And for the last handful of starts in AAA, I was saying this guy's ready right now. Call him up. Now they're going to take it slow. They're going to give him probably till May, get that extra year of service time, the business aspect of it. But when his time comes, look out for Snelling, look out for Thomas White. But Arquette has a chance to be that next top dog, that next top prospect in the Marlins system, and I think they need him to be that guy. That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Marlins. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and as always, stay safe, stay locked on, and let's go fish.